Well, thanks for joining us today. We're really glad to have you here and excited for this session about the Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards. This session will be on the Medicine, Engineering, Biological Sciences, and Physical Sciences Awards. My name is Terrence Henry. I'm the Executive Director of TAMEST. That stands for the Academy of Medicine, Engineering, and Science of Texas. We really appreciate the time and effort that is put into preparing the nominations for these awards, and we hope this session will provide you some information that will help you create a successful nomination. Before we begin, I'd like to tell you just a little bit about our organization, TAMEST. We support collaboration to advance research, innovation, human talent development, and business in Texas. TAMEST is composed of more than 330 Texas-based members of the 3 national academies. Those are the National Academy of Medicine, the National Academy of Engineering, and the National Academy of Sciences, as well as other honorific organizations, and the state's 10 Nobel laureates. So you can learn more about our mission and our initiatives at our website, which is tamest.org. We're supported by our academic member institutions, who you can see displayed here on the slides. They help make the O'Donnell Awards and other programs that TAMEST is involved in possible. A little bit about today's session and the agenda. We have the chair of our awards committee, Ann Salamone, who will give you some history and background on the awards. Ann Salamone is chairman of the board at Rochal Industries. Also joining us today is Bonnie Bartel, the Ralph and Dorothy Looney Professor of Biochemistry and Cell Biology in the Department of Biosciences at Rice University. Dr. Bartel serves as the Biological Sciences Subcommittee Chair, and she's going to discuss what the awards committee looks for in a successful application. After that, our TAMEST program officer, Stephanie Shaw, will review the nomination guidelines and the eligibility requirements before we open up for questions. When we do get to the Q&A, if you'd like to, just raise your hand using the Zoom function and we'll unmute you to ask a question. Or you can type in your question in the chat box. You're actually welcome to type in those questions throughout the session, and we'll jump to those as soon as we get to the Q&A. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Ann Salamone, chair of the awards committee. And she'll take it over next. Let's see.
I'm just unmuting myself. Thank you, Terrence. Okay, and thank you for everyone that is on this call this morning for your interest in nominating a rising Texas researcher for this important award. The Edith and Peter O'Donnell Awards, and next slide, please, thank you, annually recognize rising Texas researchers who are addressing the essential role that science and technology play in society, and whose work meets the highest standards of exemplary professional performance, creativity, and resourcefulness. The awards are named in honor of Edith and Peter O'Donnell, who have been steadfast supporters of TAMEST since its inception and are incredible advocates for excellence in education and research. Next slide. Established in 2006, the O'Donnell Awards acknowledge outstanding achievements by Texas researchers in 5 categories: medicine, engineering, biological sciences, physical sciences, and technology innovation. The Technology Innovation Award was added in 2008 to recognize individuals and research teams from non-academic institutions. These are from industry or from governmental institutions or from private research organizations. And these entities who have made major innovative technological discovery with potential for making a positive change on society. For those on this call who have non-academic accomplished colleagues, nominating them for the Technology Innovation Award is a profound recognition of their value to you and to society. There will be a separate information session solely for the Technology Innovation Award today at 2 p.m. Central Time. If you're interested in attending, please reach out to Stephanie Shaw for this registration. She is our last speaker today. Her contact information will also be included on the last slide of the presentation. To date, there have been 67 recipients of the O'Donnell Awards, 15 of whom have been elected into the National Academies of Science, Engineering, or Medicine. Recipients of the awards, the O'Donnell Awards, Each receive a medal that is a distinctive pattern representative of their area of expertise, a $25,000 honorarium, and the opportunity to present at TAMEST annual conference. The awards are presented on the second day of the conference with the presenters, with the awardees giving their presentations on the second evening of the TAMEST annual conference. The 2023 TAMEST annual conference will be held in June of 2023 in Houston, and more details will become available as plans progress. There are 5 awards given annually, 1 in each category: medicine, engineering, biological sciences, physical sciences, and technology innovation. Previously, the science category rotated each year between biological and physical sciences. New for the 2023 O'Donnell Awards, there will be 2 separate awards, one for biological and one for physical. We're incredibly grateful to the O'Donnell Foundation for their $1.15 million gift, which enabled the expansion of the awards. Their generous donation will broaden our capacity to recognize Texas's most exceptional scientists. Nominations for medicine, engineering, biological sciences, physical sciences, and technology innovation should come from not technology innovation. The first 4 that are on the left side of your screen should come from academic institutions. Nominations for technology innovation should come from industry and governmental organizations. However, they may come from academic institutions as well. The awards committee, and next slide, please, is composed of a committee chair and 15 TAMEST members, each serving a 3-year term. There are 5 subcommittees, each representing one of the 5 award categories. Again, medicine, engineering, biological sciences, physical sciences, and technology innovation. Subcommittees select finalists to advance to the external review stage, where National Academy members outside of Texas review the finalists' materials and submit their comments. Specific to the Technology Innovation Subcommittee, site visits are conducted for the selected finalist. After a comprehensive review of the candidates, the awards committees recommend award recipients to be submitted to the Nobel Laureates Committee. The Nobel Laureates Committee reviews the recommended recipients and submits their endorsement to the TAMEST Board of Directors for final approval. Now, at this time, I'd like to have Bonnie Bartel discuss what subcommittees are looking for in successful nominations. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'm Bonnie Bartel, and I'm the Biological Sciences Subcommittee Chair for the 2023 O'Donnell Awards. And today I want to share with you what the Science, Medicine, and Engineering Subcommittee members are looking for in the successful applications. So the various parts are going to be on the next slide, I think. So there's 2 statements, a 250-word statement and a 50-word summary, and those are both very important. So there's a diverse group of expertise on each subcommittee, so it's worth spending time, if you're the nominee, on these summaries and being concise and clear about what the nomination is for. The committee also looks very closely at the nominee's CV. So we look at their papers, their productivity, what journals they're published in. We don't count publications per se, but we look for the quality of the publications. And we're especially interested in the papers in which the nominee was the senior author and work that has been done as a faculty member rather than as a trainee. And one measure of quality that people use is the H factor, because the number of citations give us an idea of the breadth of the nominee's work, but of course this varies among different fields. So the 5 publications that you highlight are very important. We look at those closely. These should be from the primary literature and not review articles. We're looking for the original work for which the candidate is being nominated. So there should be some concordance between the 250-word statements and these 5 articles. And in most cases, these papers will be work done by the nominee since starting their independent positions. We also look at those 3 letters of support. We look at the authors of the letters, the writers of the letters, and their relationship to the candidate. whether those are their dissertation mentors, or they're a colleague, or are they some outside scientists, and whether they know the candidates personally or by reputation. So these awards are merit-based, so we don't look at what school the awardees were from in the previous year and eliminate those. And we also don't award in specific areas. So we don't, if we gave an award in astrophysics one year, we don't say the next year we're going to highlight chemistry. So we just are looking for the most meritorious recipients each year. The committee also might do homework to get a more accurate picture of the candidate's contribution. We might call colleagues in the field and ask if they know the person and what they think of their impact. And we might read reviews in the field to see how those nominees have been cited and how their work has influenced the field. A small part of the evaluation is that if we have two equally deserving candidates and one is in their last year of eligibility and the other has multiple years of eligibility left, we might consider that in the final deliberations. And finally, we're looking for substantial contributions as an independent investigator. So those nominees that have been in their independent position for only a few years are less likely to be competitive. So that's what I have. So I'll hand it over to Stephanie Shaw to discuss the guidelines and eligibility requirements.
Thank you, Bonnie. My name is Stephanie Shaw, and I am the program officer at TAMEST. So I'm going to talk about the guidelines and requirements. Nomination guidelines and eligibility requirements differ between the medicine, engineering, biological science, and physical science awards, and then those for the Technology Innovation Award. So for the medicine, engineering, biological, and physical science awards, the nomination guidelines include that the nominator must choose only one category for their nominee. So when they're going through the process of nominating, they will choose either medicine, engineering, biological science, or physical science. All nominees will be automatically renominated for the following 2 years after the initial nomination, as long as the nominees still meet all eligibility requirements. If a nominator would like to withdraw a nominee or add any supplemental information to their nomination packet, they can contact the TAMEST office. Research teams may be nominated in any category, and each team member will receive a citation and medal, and the honorarium is divided evenly among the team. We do ask that each team member is eligible for the award. And then some eligible nominators that includes TAMEST members, past O'Donnell Awards recipients, university presidents, chancellors, deans, provosts, department chairs, and vice presidents for research. Now, when we look at the eligibility requirements, nominees must be within 15 years of their first faculty appointment at the time the awards are given. The nominees must have spent the past 2 years performing research in Texas. Like I said earlier, for team nominations, all team members must meet the award eligibility requirements. And finally, TAMEST members are not eligible. Next slide. So the timeline, we're right in the middle of the nominations being open. They opened in February and they close May 31st. So we still have about 2 months to get nomination packets in for the deadline. Between June and August, we will compile the nomination packets, and each subcommittee will review and discuss the nominations in their category and determine which candidates will move forward to the next step of review. That's usually somewhere between 5 to 7 top candidates. In August, the full awards committee discusses the candidates that will move forward to the next step of review, and their nomination materials for medicine, engineering, biological science, and physical science are submitted to external reviewers for ranking and comments. And these external reviewers are National Academy members outside of Texas. In September, the full awards committee will meet to discuss the external reviewers' input and make final recommendations for the award finalists. Then once those finalists for each category are chosen, they will be submitted to the Nobel Laureate Committee for the review and approval. And then they will be submitted to the TAMEST Board of Directors for final approval. In October, the award recipients are notified along with their nominators, and nominators of candidates who were not selected will also be notified at that time. And then in January, the award recipients will be announced to the public. Next slide. Great. So for more information on the nomination guides, eligibility requirements, application forms, and FAQ, we have all of that on our TAMEST website at tamest.org/O'Donnell-awards. And I will turn it back over to Terrence Henry to moderate the Q&A for today.
Great, thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Ann Salamone and Bonnie Bartel. Now we're excited to have the Q&A portion of the session. Looking forward to questions from all of you in attendance today. What we'll do for this is, if you just want to type your question into the chat box and send it to everyone, that's one way we can have questions come in. The other option is for you to, looks like we don't have the raise hand function, so I'm going to unmute. Let's see. The best way right now will be to go ahead and type the question into the chat function, and I'm going to start unmuting folks, and then you'll be allowed to ask your question verbally as well. So we have one question in, and while we're addressing this question, I'll work on unmuting the participants. This is from Nisha Garg, and the question is there any restriction on the number of candidates nominated? So let's start, Stephanie, with you on answering that question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question. There's no restriction per se, but we do recommend about 2 per institution, but there isn't a hard restriction for the number of candidates nominated.
And that's 2 per institution per award.
Yes.
For the whole.
Yes, thank you for that clarification.
Okay, and then now if you'd like to ask a question, you should be able to unmute, and you can verbally ask a question. You can also enter your question in the chat box. We have another question here from LeGrand Slaughter. What is the cutoff date for the eligibility requirement of 2 years at the institution? If we had a candidate who started an academic appointment in August, September 2020, for instance, would they be eligible for this round of nomination? So again, what's the cutoff date for the eligibility requirement of having spent 2 years conducting research in Texas, I believe? So if they started their academic appointment in August, September 2020, would they be eligible for this round of nomination? Let's see, Stephanie and perhaps Chrissy, would y'all like to weigh in on that one first?
Yeah, so we're looking at 2 years from the date that the nomination is put in. So around May 31st, which is the deadline. So August and September would probably not be eligible for this year, but next year would be perfect.
Great. And then as we did go over in the information session, we do automatically renominate. All candidates are eligible for 2 years. So if you do get them in the next round, they'll be automatically renominated in subsequent years if they remain eligible. All right. Ann or Bonnie, anything you'd like to add to that answer? Okay.
I agree.
Great. So John Scoggins has a question, and we'll direct this one to Bonnie. What distinguishes the Medicine and Biological Sciences Awards?
Right, that's a good question. There is overlap there. And in the past, there have been researchers at medical schools who have won the award in biological sciences. So, so you just have to think of your nominee and whether their impact is mostly in a fundamental biological realm or is mostly has medical implications. occasionally the subcommittees will, if we have a candidate that we think would fare better in medicine, we can shift it over there for that committee to consider if they would like. So you just have to make your best guess about where that line is. It's not a clear demarcation. It might be more clear now that we have biological sciences every year. Because in the past, we only had biological sciences every year and medicine. We had biological sciences every other year and medicine every year. So some of the more biological people might have been submitted to medicine in the past, but now we should be able to separate them a little better.
Thank you, Bonnie. Anne or Stephanie, anything you'd like to add to that answer? Okay. So moving on to the next question. This is from Nisha Garg. It's a great question. Can only TAMEST member institutions nominate, or are all Texas institutions able to nominate? So let's go to Stephanie for that one.
Yes, we can have all Texas institutions nominating. So we welcome anyone to nominate as long as the nominator falls under those eligibility requirements.
Great, thank you. All right, next question is from Theodore Price, and it's about the 15-year eligibility requirement. So the question is, does that eligibility requirement begin with which date? So the October notification or the award date in January? And I'll just add to that question, does it start from, or would the cutoff be that the May 31st nomination deadline? So I guess when in the calendar year is that academic appointment, the 15-year mark, established? And Stephanie, let's go to you again.
Yeah, so that'll be the presentation at the conference. So for ours, it'll be June 21st. So within June, 15 years before June.
Is that true next year that the conference will be in June?
So we're actually still determining the dates of the conference for next year, but it'll probably be within the May or June timeframe. So when we announce the 2024 award nominations, we'll have a firm date. When we announce those nominations, we'll have a firm day set for the 2023 conference.
All right, does that mean there's a little bit of wiggle room then in that 15-year for when someone's thinking about making a nomination, that it's going to be plus or minus 3 months of that 15 years for this coming year, since we don't have a date set?
Yeah, Chrissy, let's have you help out with that one.
Sure. I would say absolutely, because this is the first year that we're kind of moving a little bit of the timing around, especially for the timeline for the awards, as well as having the conference at a completely different time than we normally do. I think we're definitely open. We won't stretch that too much, but if you come in and it's not exactly during that 15 years, it's maybe a month, or like Anne said, up to maybe 3, absolutely. The goal is to get the best person for this award. And if there's just a tiny little bit of wiggle room that we need, that's fine.
Great, thank you. I think that leads in really well to the next question from Elizabeth Holliday. And let's start with Anne on this one, and then we'll hear from Bonnie and then Stephanie. So what is your best tip for a competitive nomination? And while y'all are answering that question, just as a reminder, you can type your questions into the chat box. You should also be able to unmute yourselves if you'd like to verbally ask a question or follow up on the answer to a previous question through Zoom. So Anne, let's begin with you. The best tip, best advice for a competitive nomination.
All right, so I'm going to take this from 2 different angles. The first angle is formatting, and that is whatever your person is that you're nominating, that within the first sentence or 2 sentences, you state very clearly and obviously why they are so phenomenal. So don't start out with, something that's not going to grasp the eyes of the reviewers. Whatever it is that they are most stellar about, put it in the first 1 or 2 sentences of every section that's logical. The second thing relative to a tip for a competitive nomination, as you're all aware, we have many, many highly innovative, creative, groundbreaking scientists in the state of Texas. We're very fortunate in this regard. And being able to articulate in writing what it is that this person has done that is groundbreaking, that is innovative, that's transformative, is important. So as Bonnie said before, we're not looking at quantity, but the high level of contribution to the science that they have afforded society. Those are my 2 tips.
I totally agree with that. I think that's great advice to put the actual contribution up front, and then secondly, have a great nominee. A lot of it is out of your control as a nominator, right? You have, we look at this at the CV, and so some of those just bubble to the top.
Those are great. And I'll just add, I think it's also just really important to have everything in on time for their packet. So we don't have to scramble and there's nothing that's left out. So they have a full, complete packet when we send it over to the subcommittee to review.
Great question. Thank you. So we have another question here from Manish Kumar. Do you direct the reviewers to look at independent career versus overall career? So Anne, let's start with you and then we'll hear from Bonnie. Again, the question is, do you direct the reviewers to look at their independent career versus their overall career?
I guess I'm confused about what's meant by independent career here.
Talking about post-training, so their career as a professor versus as a postdoc or graduate student.
Yeah, so it's definitely their independent career that makes a significant contribution to this. So while many people in academia or in industry have started some of their profound work while they're still in school, if they haven't made dramatic differences once they're out of school or change course altogether, that's what's looked at favorably. Bonnie, I think you can address this more succinctly.
Right. I think it's we're really looking at the independent career. Although if the question is, do we direct the outside reviewers? I don't think that we do direct the outside reviewer. I think so the subcommittee comes up with a top list that then goes to outside reviewers, and those reviewers, I'm not sure what their instructions are. They're just instructed to rank and comment on them. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So they can rank them as they wish, but I think we will have pre-selected the candidates that have made substantial contributions during their independent career.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. So yeah, we got a little bit of both insight onto the committee selection and then what the reviewers do in regards to that question. So thank you, Anne and Bonnie, for that. Just as a reminder, and in case you didn't know, we do have a frequently asked questions guide on the website for the O'Donnell Awards. You can see the URL in the slide there, and you can also find it pretty easily from our homepage, TAMEST.org. But we collect the questions that we frequently get about the O'Donnell Awards and put them together in one document. So that's a good resource to take a look at, and really enjoying these questions today because we'll go back and see what we might need to add to that document going forward. So thank you for contributing to the discussion and conversation today. With that, we'll get to the next question, which is from Rebecca Fisher. And her question is that it seems the award is geared toward mid/well-established career faculty rather than younger career scientists. Do you advise that nominations for rising earlier career academics to hold pending a more robust or senior author dossier? So really, I think the question is it better if you're earlier on in your career and maybe don't have as many senior author citations to wait to apply? And let's start with Bonnie on this one, and then we'll hear from Ann.
I mean, I think what you want to be doing is thinking of your institution, who the most qualified person for this particular award is. And I wouldn't not nominate somebody because you don't have somebody who's like at 14.5 years. If you have a great person who's got 5 years of experience and that's you think is your best candidate, then nominate them, right? There's no penalty for having been nominated and not received the award. You can always nominate again as their CV gets more robust, but we like to have many nominees. We don't always, in the history, we haven't always had as many nominees as we might have liked. So I wouldn't not nominate someone because they're more junior.
Thank you. Ann, anything you'd like to add to what Bonnie had to say?
Well, the thinking, the soft thinking around the O'Donnell Awards is that the people that are nominated and receive the O'Donnell Awards, that they are likely to become members of one of the national academies later in their career, that they have that sort of drive and contributions that they had the potential to become members of the National Academy of Science, Engineering, or Medicine, or all three of them. And that is, so while I agree with what Rebecca has written here, usually it is somebody that's been in their position, their academic position for a number of years. Sometimes you've got that rare individual that is just incredibly driven and they certainly should be, and earlier in their career, and they certainly should be nominated.
Thank you. I think this next question actually picks up kind of where this question left off, and it's from Yubin Zhu. How much weight is given to the citation numbers? If a breakthrough discovery is relatively new, one would not expect a lot of citations. How does the committee evaluate this? And Ann, let's start with you, and then we'll hear from Bonnie on that one.
I'm going to do a pass and throw it over to Bonnie.
I mean, I think for a very new breakthrough discovery, then we need that contextualized in the letters, right, and in the summary statement. So yeah, a brand new discovery is not going to have the citations, but that's not to say that we can't recognize it as such if it's really highlighted well in the letters.
Thank you. All right, we've got one more question in the chat. We have time for a couple more questions after that. So again, if you have any questions or follow-up questions from the previous ones that have been asked, feel free to enter them in the chat box, and you can also unmute yourself if you'd like to verbally ask a question. So another question from LeGrand Slaughter: is higher weight given to work done in Texas? I'm wondering whether high-performing researchers who moved to Texas only 2 to 3 years ago would be at a disadvantage. Let's start with you, Bonnie, and then we'll hear from Ann on that one. And Stephanie, if you'd like to add on when they're done too.
I don't think that they would be at a disadvantage. If they're highly established, you know, if they've made really groundbreaking discoveries and then recently moved to Texas, we're going to certainly recognize that.
Right, I definitely agree. It only brings increased value to our Texas researchers to bring in that expertise and that knowledge base into the state. And recognition that they've moved to Texas after making some substantive innovative discoveries and research only adds to their value. So whatever they've done through their body of independent work predominantly is of importance.
Thank you. Stephanie or Chrissy, anything y'all would like to add to that? No? All right.
I will agree with what Ann said there. The idea is for this person to stay in Texas and do their work in Texas and have Texans benefit from their work. So yes, there would not be a disadvantage there.
Thank you. All right, we do have time for a couple more questions if there's any more. Again, you're welcome to ask that question verbally if you unmute yourself, or you can type it into the chat box. So we'll just give one more minute for any additional questions before we wrap up. Okay, a question from Manish Kumar, wondering if there are any statistics available, and might ask you if you can specify in the chat box which specific statistics you're interested in, and we can address that question. Okay, great.
I can
Thank you.
speak up here. Number of applicants, and number of successful applicants, number of renominations. It would just help to, engineer here. What can you do?
Understood. Thank you. So, Chrissy, let's have you tackle that question if you don't mind.
Sure. Typically, we get around 40 to 50 applications. That really depends on back when we had to alternate the science award. That number really, it rose in the years that we had biological sciences, and it was a little less when we had physical sciences. This year is a little new for all of us. So since we have the 5th award, that number could go up. I'm thinking we may have 50 plus moving forward. And it also, since we do now, once you're nominated, you're automatically nominated for the 2 years following that. So that keeps a group of people in there as well moving forward. I will add on, I wanted to say this a little bit before. Most of the recipients of the award are nominated multiple times. So if you do put someone in and maybe they're an early career or earlier in their career, that's good to get them into the pool, because it does take a few years to get this award sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And that's a good way to get them in early, and then you can always update their materials moving forward. As for the other stat on renoms, was that correct? The renominations?
Yes. Yes.
I'd have to kind of go back into the numbers. Again, it's changing because we're keeping them in, but I would say the majority of people who receive the award have been nominated at least once before.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. It is a highly competitive award, as we showed you. 15 of these recipients have gone on to be elected to the National Academies, which is really the goal of the program, to identify the rising stars that are on that path. However, the persistence and dedication really does pay off, as Chrissy mentioned, with the renominations. We've had several institutions in recent years have their first O'Donnell recipient selected and awarded. So there is a path forward for that, and just really, I think, requires some patience and dedication and persistence, and really encourage, like Bonnie said, the more nominations to come in. So Ann or Bonnie, anything to add to that response before we jump in? We have a couple more questions before we wrap up. All right. Question from Catherine O'Donnell. And let's start with Bonnie on this one and then hear from Ann. Will reviewers prioritize letters of support from former mentors over colleagues in the field who may know the nominee by reputation? So is there a prioritization for former mentors over colleagues in the field who may just know the nominee by their reputation?
You have multiple letters, but I think a former mentor is going to perhaps know the nominee best, but they also sort of have they may not be the most objective person. So I think it's valuable to have strong letters from colleagues in the field are actually, I would say, in some ways more valuable, although the mentor letters are nice because they're very informative. The letters from the colleagues are maybe more believable. I'll say that.
Yeah, so I agree. Typically the letters of support from former mentors or collaborators give a reviewer an idea about who the person is. And the letters that are from people that are knowledgeable in the same area of research are highly valuable relative to the value of the research that the nominee has accomplished.
Great, thank you. Next question is from Junming Wong. It's about citations. So paper citation numbers can be quite different in different fields. Would the reviewers consider the difference in citations among the different fields? Let's have Bonnie answer this one first, and then Anne have anything you'd like to add as well.
So yes, the reviewers are aware of that, and that's another place where the letter writers can put the citation numbers in context for their field. So reviewers are aware that different fields have different citation numbers, but it's good for the letter writers to point out that this, what looks to you like a low number, is actually excellent in our field.
Right, and that's part of the decision on who the reviewer subcommittee composition helps with that as well.
All right. Don't see any more questions. Last call for questions. Otherwise, we'll wrap up. Okay, thanks so much for the questions today. These were really great questions. Again, we do have some frequently asked questions collected on the website. We'll be able to incorporate some of the questions we got here today. Want to thank all of you for attending, and to Anne Salamone, Bonnie Bartel, and Stephanie Shaw for conducting the session. We can go ahead and move on to the next slide. Just as a reminder, the call for nominations are now open, and I'm really looking forward to receiving your submissions and nominations for the awards. We hope that you found some of this information today helpful. We're going to post the video and slides of today's session on our website. You'll also receive links to those in a follow-up email, and you'll get a survey as well for you to submit feedback on this information session and give us any ideas or input on what we could improve for next time. So as a reminder, the deadline for applications is May 31st, 2022. We'd also like to invite all of you to join us in June for our TAMEST annual conference, Imperatives for Health. It'll take place in San Antonio, Texas, from June 20th to the 22nd of 2022. And it's going to address what communities need in order to be healthy and successful. We've got a great program lined up, including speakers like Nobel laureate Dr. James Allison from MD Anderson, National Science Foundation Director, Dr. Sitharaman Patwanathan, and President of the National Academy of Sciences, Dr. Marcia McNutt. The real highlight of the conference, as we talked about earlier, are the research presentations and awards ceremony for the O'Donnell Awards. Both of those will take place on Tuesday, June 21st. So again, our conference is open to the greater research community in Texas. You can find more information and register online at tamest.org. You'll also get a link to the conference info in the follow-up email tomorrow. So as a reminder, that this application deadline for the O'Donnell Awards is May 31st, 2022. If you have any questions or need any more information, you can contact Stephanie Shaw. We'll display her information here on the final slide of the presentation. Want to thank you all again for joining us today. Really appreciate your time and your questions. And we'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you again for joining us. That concludes today's session.